Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Well Played. I'm your host Bluetongue from around Sydney, Australia. I'm also joined by the hosts. Hollering in from the hills, we have District? Harrow. How are you doing, Harrow?
We want to start again.
I say if you make a mistake like that, just roll with it. I mean, we can then make jokes about District Harrow. And...
Yeah.
Are you calling me fat?
No,
You're the sequel to District 9.
Yeah. You're less good than District 9, I'm sorry. Yeah, so how are you doing, Harrow?
Well, apparently I'm like Elysium. It could be worse, it could be like Chappie, I suppose. Yes, this morning I was reminded just how good Transformers Prime was. I'm sitting down with my Weet-Bix, flick on the TV, switch to Channel 11 to see what cartoon is on, and it's the season finale of Season 1 of Transformers Prime. It's so good. People, watch Transformers Prime.
Okay. And is that following the traditional Transformers story? As in Optimus Prime leading Autobots against Megatron, etc., etc.?
Yes, and they've got the voice cast and the voice acting is probably the best in all Transformers I've ever seen or heard or otherwise. They've got the original Optimus, the original Megatron reprising their roles, and I gotta say, they bring it. Megatron is so good.
Oh, cool. I'm interested. What kind of animation are we talking about? Are we talking like 3D or?
Well, yeah, 3D. Sort of like, 3D. We're talking a Clone Wars style animation.
Ah, cool. Yeah, sounds interesting. Bounding in from the Blue Mountains, we have Cam. How you doing, Cam?
I'm doing pretty well. Last week was a week where I finally attempted to dispatch my PhD, and it was one of those all-consuming, long week, kind of depressing things, and I was feeling pretty suicidal by the end of it. So to have it over and done with would be nice. We'll see if that's close to where we're at when my supervisors get back to me later in the week. But if we are done, then that would be tremendous.
Awesome. I have strong recollections of many resubmits, as in like requests for changes and stuff like that when my wife was doing that. So I do sympathise.
But yeah, having said that, PhD, great thing to do. Highly recommend it.
It's a qualification. Yay. Gravitating in from Gladesville, we have Bauxite. How you doing, Baux?
You calling me fat?
I'm just calling you a planet, man. That's
man.
all.
Well, we've got District Harrow and Planet Bauxite. This is awesome. Look, I'm doing fine. Yeah.
You do have an eternal cat.
That's true. He is quite large, although he has been losing some weight. So yeah, things.
And his saggy skin drags along the ground.
Yeah, but he's always been like that. He's been like the sack cat, I guess. Anyway, yeah, things.
Grown him with legs.
Oh dear. No, I'm doing pretty well. I've been playing a lot of Diablo. It didn't work on my computer for some time, but miraculously, when I upgraded to Windows 10, it started working again. So yeah, that's been a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Apart from that, I've just been doing some job hunting stuff, and I've got a couple of positive leads. So yeah, so that should be good.
Excellent.
How you doing? You?
I am doing well. I'm a little tired at the moment, traditionally speaking. I have been investing a lot of time into the latest novel that I purchased when I was on my holiday last a couple of weeks ago now. It's called The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I'm really enjoying it. It has a very distinct rag to riches kind of feel about it.
Is there a wizard who can turn rags into money?
Not quite, but there's people who can turn stone into gold. And other things like smoke and blood.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds okay.
They need to nerf that.
Nerf your novel. Generally speaking, I'm really enjoying it. It's well written. I guess there are partial plot holes, and I'm kind of seeing a lot of the plot twists coming, but at the same time, I also wasn't seeing some of the plot twists coming, and it was like pleasantly surprising and original in that way. Yeah, he's done a very unique world and some like really unique magic stuff happening rather than your like traditional fireball bearing wizards and stuff like that. So that's really cool.
Cool.
It has a strong kind of anime feel to it as well, like the kind of thing where it would be really easy to transfer into an anime kind of setting. So yeah. So, Well Played is a podcast about sharing comic books, graphic novels, movies, TV shows, computer games, and board games we enjoy with our listeners. Fair warning, we're going to spoil the hell out of everything we talk about. Who put that in?
Yeah, I put that in. I thought we needed a spoiler warning.
Alright, okay. That's true.
Major one for this episode.
Yeah. Alright, so after you've listened to the introduction from not Bauxite, from Cam, then bear warning that you might need to jump, say, about halfway through the episode to miss said spoilers. So, without further ado, let's get stuck in.
So, as well as talking about our cats and who's fat in the group this week, the other topics that we have to talk about are kind of two comic book themed themes for this week. In particular, we'll be kicking off discussing the latest Marvel Netflix show, Jessica Jones. Now, for those of you who have been living under a rock, maybe haven't heard of this show before, basically this is the second of two shows that Marvel have on Netflix. Kind of an unexpected character for them to use. It's not the most well-known of characters. It's a character that might be best known for readers of comics as the one who is the woman married to Luke Cage. Jessica Jones was one of the first kind of mature titles that Marvel put out. Really broke ground with what is traditionally a very family-friendly, very much across the board kind of broader audience for a comic book company. Marvel don't tend to do those very much. So when Bendis decided to kind of kick this off and take things in this mature direction, Marvel had an imprint called Marvel Max. And in this comic, you had everything from the character had been sexually abused in her past all the way over to all kinds of explicit violence. And Bendis said, and this is a quote, I really like to say a lot. Now, we might want to censor that in the final version of this podcast, but it gives you a sense that they started off very hot and heavy with the language. They were very much happy to salt every sentence with the F word, every second word. They stepped back right from that later on in the series, but certainly start off with, we got the idea that Marvel were breaking new and different ground. It's a very different version of Marvel. I think this is what this TV show is like. I think it's been quite faithful to the book in that sense, and being a very different idea of that traditional Marvel vision, kind of taking that traditional Marvel story and, putting it out there in another dark kind of way. I myself only watched the kind of first few episodes of it, so I've seen the first episode, a little bit of the second. I'm kind of looking here for some early reactions. So to kick us off with,
sorry, before you get into that, can you give us a rough idea of the story in the comic book setting? So I've never read them before, and I'm assuming it's not like massively directly related to the TV show. I feel like the TV show would have some similar themes and characters.
Actually, they're quite the TV show is pretty direct kind of adaptation of what the comic book was like. So Jessica Jones had been a background character in the Avengers before this. She had been, kind of nominally introduced way back and had obviously been featured in the Marvel Universe, but it was only when Bendis in 2001 took a punt at more of a mature kind of take on the character, more of a mature kind of title. Basically, she's quite a powerful character, but rather than deciding to be a kind of superhero, her life took a different kind of route. Now, we said we'd be spoiling this a fair bit. Due to her being mind controlled by the Purple Man and sexually assaulted by him, the Avengers didn't help her in that time in her life. So for a period of 9 months in the comic book, she's under the control of the Purple Man, and the Avengers don't come to her aid, don't come to her rescue. So she decides she doesn't want to do the whole superhero thing. She decides instead that the whole superhero thing isn't for her. She just decides to become a private eye. This is kind of where the TV show comes in. It's adapting very directly a comic book about that. And I've been surprised at how close the two have been. So, yeah, she's a fairly powerful character, has the ability to jump hella high, the ability to super strength, kind of the ability to kick the crap out of just about anyone. One of the more powerful female characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we've seen so far. And yet this has got a very sort of low-level kind of feel to it. You don't see her powers up close. They kind of zoom out when she's engaging that kind of powerful activity, and not a superhero character, certainly a street-level character. So I guess my first sort of question here, and something I wanted to explore a little bit, is initial reactions to the TV show. When you guys saw this for the first time, what did you think? What were some of the initial impressions that this show made?
I'll go first. I found the first episode to be a bit slow. Understandable. They have to do a bit of world building in the first episode. But after that, from episode 2, it goes along at a good pace.
Yeah, I got a very distinctive Homeland feel from this. It's got a very different tone to Daredevil. And I think that's probably helped a bit by the fact that it's using the same musical composer as Homeland. But yeah, Harrow's right. It's a little slow to start off with, but a lot of the themes, deal with mental illness, abuse, trauma. It's very dark, and I would say probably darker than Daredevil, but also in a completely different way. So yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it so far.
I found it to be particularly interesting from the fallen superhero kind of perspective. So taking like all these really adverse situations that many other superheroes characters have been in, and then transferring it into like a different character where things didn't go nearly as well. Things didn't sort of all come up roses in the end. It turned out to be very, very messy. So I really like it from that perspective, where not all the good things always happen. There's not always a happy ending. And I'm kind of expecting that as a conclusion for this TV series. I've not actually finished it yet myself. But I do like the adult-based storyline, as in no coddling of the audience and stuff like that. And I feel like the way that the story sort of is expressed is quite good. Again, though, as you guys have already mentioned, it feels a little bit laboured in parts. Like, you kind of want the story to move on a bit faster.
I found the first episode, I didn't really know where it was going. So I was like, okay, this is pretty slow. I mean, I would actually even say the first half of the first episode was just a bit slow. But once I started realizing that this was part of a huge arc, it really grabbed me. I actually like the fact that they've taken time to flesh out the situations, and, they probably could have cut one episode out without too much drama around the episode 8 or 9 mark. But I think all of it is pretty good and there to serve the purpose of just showing how absolutely evil and depraved Kilgrave is, the Purple Man. So, yeah, I think...
He's actually one of the most attractive characters to me in this story. Like, I really like the way that he's been sort of played and the way he's expressed by David Tennant. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, he does a really good job of just showing actually how completely evil he is, and also completely evil in a different way to the way Fisk was in Daredevil. Yeah. So Fisk was all, look, I want to make this city great, and my idea of great is very different to anyone else's. Kilgrave is like, I'm going to get what I want because that's just how I roll. So,
what about you, Cam? How did you feel about it? What were your first impressions?
So everyone's mentioned that it starts off very slow. I'm not the kind of person to typically get bored while watching something. I tend to think I've got a long attention span. And yeah, that first episode, I did find myself going, no, stick with it. Don't tune out. I found myself tuning out that a little bit. It was interesting. I think it was one of the better shows that I've seen this year, but definitely slower paced to start off with. Definitely unpleasant as hell to watch. I think the kind of stuff with she obviously has PTSD, and they explain that, or show that I should say, pretty well. I was impressed by it, but yeah, look, it's not pleasant light Marvel fare. It's not. If you enjoyed the Avengers, then I recommend you check this out. But Kristen Ritter, absolutely, I did not have any faith in her as being able to play Jessica Jones.
She kills it. She's great.
Yeah, I thought, here's this character. In the comic book, she's portrayed as having all this strength. How is wiry, sort of apology girl from Breaking Bad going to pull this off exactly? But yeah, she actually kills it. She kills the expectations that you have, and I think maybe it was quite a deliberate casting in that way. What did you guys think of her performance? Am I the only one who was impressed by that? I know sort of that Bauxite has indicated that she's killed it. What about the other two?
I thought she was excellent, and another character I think that sort of gets overlooked is Carrie-Anne Moss, who was playing Jerry Hogarth. Absolutely. All the stereotypical lawyers are terrible stuff. She represents this in this cold, evil, would defend the devil if the devil paid enough sort of way.
Well, the devil would probably need representation, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no one can prove he's done anything. No, I thought she was amazing, and I spent. At first, I was like, oh yeah, she's an awful lawyer character. Okay, cool. And towards the end, I'm going, is she the big bad for the season 3 or something? Does she get powers? Because they're really building up how completely awful she is as a human being. And I think more than anything, that's actually to, I mean, I don't know much about Jessica Jones as a series and whether she does end up getting powered. But in the first season, I felt it was to contrast how evil an ordinary human being can be compared to someone who has powers. So.
I really enjoyed Kristen Ritter as with like her wry sense of humor. I enjoyed the detective aspects of it, and the sort of seeing through all the crap and just cutting to the chase for like her investigations and the kind of things that she sort of is looking into. That said, I'm not all the way through the series yet. I'm only about halfway. But she definitely does a good job of carrying the series, especially along with David Tennant. Like, they both work really well as really interesting characters. So, yeah, she did an excellent job.
Yeah, I like, at the same time, like and dislike how almost absolutely everything she does is completely inadmissible in court.
But it's not going to court.
Well, no. But I would not hire her as a private eye if I wanted to, like, pin someone for a crime.
That's true. That said, like, the legalities of shows like this have never really been, like, a major sticking point for plot and stuff like that.
Maybe a bit more in Daredevil.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. That's the exception that proves the rule, because he's, a lawyer and everything. But yeah, definitely not something you tend to focus on while watching a Marvel film or a Marvel TV show in this case. I think I mentioned before, something that sticks out here is this is quite unlike anything that Marvel have done so far, not just in terms of tone or whatnot that we've talked about, but definitely in terms of the content that they allowed and the content that they introduced here. Like, from that angle, the only thing that I could compare this to as far as what Marvel have had so far would be what we've seen of Deadpool so far, the kind of content. And, I think this, it's some of a departure, isn't it, from Marvel's traditional kind of fare? Yeah,
I mean, comparing it to, say, Ant-Man, which I felt was, like, aimed at someone 8 years old. But, and still a whole heap of fun. But, yeah, this is very mature stuff. They really deal with really quite full-on themes and the level of humor is there is humor there, but it's not bluff out loud, slap your thigh type stuff. It's just, yeah. I don't know where I was going with that. Okay.
It sounded good. I was right on, on that particular right up until the very end when the train derailed. But
yeah,
it's more wry, witty banter type humor, and making sarcastic comments and stuff like that. That seems to be much more its ilk, as opposed to, just cracking jokes and stuff like that, Iron Man style.
Mm.
But she introduces New York City as the city that never sleeps, but the city that sleeps around. And I think that's one of the first lines in episode 1. So jumping right into the tone there.
Yeah.
2 minutes on the 2 minutes on the treadmill, 20 minutes with the quarter pounder.
That was another line that I loved in this one, because maybe I relate to it as far as my own routine goes a little bit too much. But definitely the way that she views people is very cynical. There's a cynical edge to this kind of story that you don't see with Marvel's more optimistic work.
Yeah. Yep. I'd pay that. What about, how do we feel about some of the other characters in the series? So what about Luke Cage?
I think, Luke Cage is one of my favorite characters in the Marvel Comics universe. So seeing him here, I don't know quite what it was, but the way he was introduced in the beginning seemed a little disappointing. And I'm sure that as the season goes on and as I see more, that I'll be a bit happier with that and everything. But to begin with, he's kind of the guy that just sort of owns a bar and is sleeping around, kind of. However, with the casting, did I pick this right? Was it the same character who plays Remy in Netflix other show House of Cards?
I don't think so.
No,
I was way off then.
No, he's the same guy who plays Lamont Bishop in The Good Wife. Mike Coulter is his name.
Okay, so this has been our kind of refer to every other show that's on Netflix sort of segment here.
Does it have any characters from House of Cards?
I don't know.
I'm just joking. No, I don't think it does.
No, look, I thought he did an amazing job as Luke Cage. I mean, I'm not excessively familiar with the character from the comics, but in isolation on the TV show, he's done really well. He does become more prominent as the series goes on, particularly towards the end. He, in terms of, he's just a guy who owns a bar that sleeps around. The relationship between him and Jessica develops, and it's a complex relationship as well because, spoilers, she killed his wife while under the control of Kilgrave, and she doesn't immediately tell him, "Hey, I'm the girl who killed your wife." So there is a lot of tension there, as you might imagine. So he does a really good job. And
does he have a superhero persona that
he's known as Power Man in the comics. So he was one of the first in the 1970s, one of these blaxploitation characters that Marvel came out with, and invulnerable skin, kind of hard as diamonds kind of thing. Guy that used to speak like every other black character spoke in the 1970s in film. Kind of think of Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction kind of character. When they sort of slid into the 90s and had him featured prominently in another comic called Heroes for Hire. He was one of the main characters in that. His speech kind of was less jive, a little bit more up to date, a little bit less of the blaxploitation kind of stuff. And just a really good character in the Marvel Universe. I'm yet to see the stuff that I like about him in this, which is he's a natural leader. He's quite charismatic, quite funny, but again, early days, and I admit to only having seen, the pilot and a little bit more of this. But here, we've touched on Luke Cage, we've touched on the main character, Carrie-Anne Moss's character. We spoke a little bit about Kilgrave. The Purple Man was such a ridiculous character when he was introduced. To see him in this as such a powerful character is really good. They only recently had him twist that way in Marvel's comics. What about some of the other characters that were in this? I mean, certainly the Australian actress that's in this, Rachel Taylor, plays Patsy Walker, or Trish as she's referred to in this. Am I missing anyone else? Any other characters that stick out in this?
Yeah, Malcolm, the inverted commas junkie from down the hall. He does an amazing job. He plays that character really, really well, going both through like addiction and then later on dealing with all the guilt and regret he's got through that as well. So
I'm starting to wonder if they've crammed too many dark themes into this show. Like, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about like really bad physical violence, we're talking about like manipulation of people, we're talking about addiction. Like, man, like it's certainly got not that many upbeat like feels to it.
I mean, look at the end of that first episode. Spoiler warning. You think that this family has just gotten away and that she saved this character who has thanked her and hugged her, and then the way that ends with, her parents' brains splattered all over that elevator. That was like a dark twist on the traditional Marvel fare. Like I said, it's unpleasant to watch. Is it too unpleasant in terms of its tone?
That is actually the point at which this series completely grabbed me.
Yeah.
I was a little bit worried, and probably needlessly so, since it's Netflix, and they seem to just make everything that's amazing. But no, when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is great. This is not just an episodic private eye superhero detective bullshit. It's not going to go down the same path that season 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. went down, which is, yes, we're going to deal with these characters for one episode, we get a happy ending, and we'll move on to some complete other crap next week. The fact that it is one huge story arc, which is just, it's dark, but it actually makes the universe feel, or makes the bad guy feel threatening. He's one dude and he can mind control a handful of people at a time. So what? I mean, he's not exactly Ultron. Why do I care? But he actually makes, because the themes are so dark, it makes it that he is a real villain and he is causing massive harm in the world. So yeah, the fact that those themes are dark means that, the fact that he's controlling a small amount of people in a neighborhood, really threatening and really worth dealing with, and really worth these characters addressing him.
Yeah, cool. So to draw it all together, how and who would you recommend this to? Cam?
Anyone and everyone who kind of has watched Marvel's fare so far, be that the films, be that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., whatnot, and have said, and I've had all too many people say this to me, but that it's always the same. This idea that Marvel only producing the kind of TV shows, the kind of films that they've produced before. Because again, the same tropes are there. It's the hero story. It's the wry sense of humor. It's so many of the other things that you see with Marvel, but presented through so much of a darker lens, and just showing the kind of stuff that Marvel can pull off if they go in that different direction. So anyone maybe sick of superheroes right now, it's a superhero TV show I actually ironically recommend.
Excellent. What about you, Harrow?
I would recommend it not to children.
Fair enough. I also approve of this classification. But what about like teenagers? So we're talking like borderline 15 plus, or?
Yeah, I'd probably say about 15 plus.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing explicit in here. I mean, the violence, it's actually less explicitly violent than
Daredevil, for sure.
Yeah. It's there's very few times you see blood, or at least blood in the same frame as a body. Whereas in Daredevil, you're seeing people getting eviscerated left, right, and center. So much less explicit violence. It deals with sexual themes, but you never see nipple. So.
Yeah, nothing too explicit. We're certainly not talking Game of Thrones level.
Yeah.
Yep.
You hear about how horrible her sexual assault was, but don't worry, we've got that, Janet Jackson at the Super Bowl crowd reassured here that they won't see nipple in this.
Yes. Well, I mean, if I would recommend this to the same sort of person that enjoys, say, Game of Thrones, or Homeland, or that sort of darker type TV show that seems to be pretty popular at the moment.
Yeah.
If you enjoy House of Cards, go for it.
I'd probably throw Breaking Bad on this list. I like that
Most
sort
definitely.
of dealing with the really dark, heavy themes and sort of that real struggle with like the main characters and stuff like that.
This might seem a bit out there, but if you enjoyed Daredevil, I would say that you might enjoy this as well.
Shocking, yeah.
Wow.
Really shocking.
Wow.
Mind blown.
Yeah. All right. So generally speaking, I would be very hesitant to let anyone under the age of 15 watch this show if I was a parent, say. But at the same time, it deals with more serious like themes and points that are well worth visiting and unfortunate realities of real life. So,
just to sort of jump back a bit here, what I really liked is that this is an origin story series. You don't really see much about how Jessica Jones gets her powers, but you see the origin story of the Purple Man, Kilgrave. You see the origin story of Will Simpson, who turns out to be Nuke later on. You see not really so much the origin story of Luke Cage, but he's introduced into the series. And Trish Walker as well. Her origin story as a superhero is built into this as well. So there's like 5 or 6. I'm assuming a couple of the other minor characters might turn out to be powered foes or heroes later on as well. So I really like that.
Does Trish turns into a superhero? Does she?
Yes, she
major
was
spoiler.
Hellcat. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Sorry, what?
Hellcat.
Yeah, she becomes Hellcat. Episode 11 or 12, when Will Simpson / Nuke breaks into Jessica Jones' apartment and starts beating up on Jessica Jones after she's been injured. Trish takes a red tablet from Nuke, so it's actually a bit of a deviation from her original origin, but I'm guessing that's how she gets her powers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Awesome. All right, moving on.
Hang on to say we've talked about everything we've liked about the series. Are we going to talk about stuff we didn't like or could be improved upon?
Harrow, what's your complaint about this show?
No major complaints. You were talking about Luke Cage. I just think we're getting a bit too much of him, but that's probably because they're setting him up to spin him off in his own show.
Whoa, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't know how many more Marvel shows.
Confirmed. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
Okay,
geez.
so that's why they're giving you a lot of him. He's getting his own show. Okay. Something I didn't like about Agent Carter, the whole bash you over the head that this is part of Captain America. This show didn't do it, but I felt it was being bashed over the head. Why? I'm not a hero. She's a hero. I'm not a hero. She's a hero. That they didn't need to do that as much. I think it's good in comics where you ask this yourself without, the story having to spoon feed you it repeatedly.
So, Watchmen.
Yeah, I never got that feeling from Watchmen.
Yeah. You guys kept saying how much you liked Kilgrave. I actually loved him in his absence. I found him horrifying in his absence, just with what he could do, and having to look around every corner and second guess every decision every time someone speaks with you and stuff like that. But when he was on screen, he came a bit across like a whinging pom to me. Did you guys...
I'm not sure I agree with that. The main scene that she keeps flashing back to of saying, Jessica, get back here. It sounds like a whinging pom when you sort of look at it or listen to it initially, but the reality is that's exactly the kind of thing a really sadistic, manipulative person like him would say. And I think that's a really good expression of that part of his personality.
Also, come on, a whinging pom is a terrifying, terrifying thing. So to have that aspect of this character nailed, I think adds to it. Look, I get your point, though, as far as him being terrifying in his absence because of how they built him up. And certainly that part where one of many parts where this happens, quite frankly, but, she's walking down a corridor and you see him appear for that split of a second next to her and disappear again.
Mm.
It's that kind of jump scare moment. They did that very well in PT, the kind of playable teaser to that game that never came out, Silent Hills, and they repeated that kind of jump scare technique, I guess, for this, and that was quite good, I thought. But yeah, I'm yet to actually get to much of Kilgrave in extended sequences, but I get how that could be perhaps maybe a little bit of a letdown.
Look, no, I like Harrow's point that he is very threatening when he's not actually on screen as well.
Yeah,
there is that point
up so much.
There was that point where Malcolm, who is just seen as a pity case, I guess, by Jessica, being the junkie down the hall who's so off his face he can't even unlock his own door, turns out to be controlled by Kilgrave, and his behaviour is not. Has been calculating this whole time to play on her pity and her natural, predilection to being the savior or the hero. To have him suddenly be controlled by Kilgrave and actually be against her, that was a huge reveal. That was amazing. I was like, oh my goodness!
One which was just spoiled for me, but now I'm going to be freaking terrified of that character whenever I watch him. It's that kind of slowly revealing show.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry about spoiling that, but yeah.
No. We said we were going to spoil it.
On the show.
Yeah.
Just to quickly backtrack to the jump scares that you guys were talking about, did you interpret those as an expression of Kilgrave's power, or were you interpreting those as an expression of Jessica's poor mental health?
Yeah. Dare I say, her poor mental health is caused by Kilgrave's power is made powerful by her poor mental health. It's hard to see where one ends and the other begins.
Yeah, okay. I felt it was more to do with her mental health than it was him, actually making her think that he was around every corner and stuff like that. But I think he's just had that influence on her at some point in her life that she feels so intimidated.
Yeah, it's more the echoing trauma, I guess, for her that ties in with her PTSD. But the fact that she's already so messed up from her childhood, it's crazy.
Yeah.
To have an additional trauma dumped into her life was just full on.
All right, so moving on.
Basically, something that I like to do with this show is look at the topics that we've got for each week and decide what's the underlying theme that we weren't thinking about but unconsciously brought these things together. Now, this week it's looking at comics that are not your traditional comics. So previously we had Jessica Jones, which is darker than Marvel's usual fare. This time around, we're talking about Y: The Last Man, which, unlike a lot of comic books, actually has a beginning, middle, and end. We've spoken about this before on the show about how a lot of comic books are entirely second act. So by what I mean, you get your origin story, and then you've got a whole lot of story that goes on for there. Rarely do you see characters die or the story actually finish itself off. So Spider-Man's been going for close to 40 years now. Pretty sure it's been over 40 years. We've had 50 years, actually, close to. We've had stories from Batman. So Batman's last ever story, The Dark Knight Returns, has had 2 sequels. Here we've actually got one story. And now, we're now on, it's a third, we're on a second sequel now, and the third is coming up. In this case, we're talking about a story that has a beginning, middle, end. That's not all that makes Y: The Last Man memorable. When you think about some of the best creators in comics, when you think about the likes of Bendis, who were talking about his property, Jessica Jones just a little bit ago, when you think about the great creators, you think of people like Kirkman. One other name that has to come to mind is Brian K. Vaughan. We've talked about his current work, Saga, on this show a little bit. talking about right now one of his older works, Y the Last Man. This show, I say show, this comic book, but that leads me nicely to my next point. Has been picked up, has been optioned as a TV show by FX, and we're sure you're going to be hearing a lot about it. So giving you a chance to get the early scoop on Y the Last Man and why you should be reading this comic. So part of the reason we're talking about this, I guess, Bluetongue, is that you recently picked this up and you're starting afresh with it. So what have been your kind of early experiences or early impressions of Y the Last Man?
Well, I found it very... I was going to say relatable. That's not entirely true. But I found it very appealing in its storytelling. So the artwork was good, and I knew that I was going to probably enjoy Brian K. Vaughan's writing more than anything else. And
it's tremendous, isn't it?
Yeah, like it's entirely original. It's got a lot of good pacing, and it's got a lot of information in there for you in terms of like the characters' motivations and stuff like that, which is also quite interesting. So that's kind of what drew me to it, aside from the comic book guy's recommendation. Yeah. What about you guys?
I liked it so much I read all 60 chapters in 2 days.
Okay.
So from the beginning to the end of the story.
Yep.
But what really sucked you into it within clearly within the first few pages?
Just I don't. How would you describe it as one thing? Yeah, the way the story is told, the characters are engaging, the mystery as to they're going out to find what's caused this or how they can cure it or how they can stop it from happening to the later generation, or also traveling. Also, I love this traveling around the post, don't want to call it apocalyptic, but post-disaster, and how the country's gone all to hell. And I particularly like that part about, after all the men are gone, Australia seems to do well because we're a constitutional monarchy.
So
yeah,
something
it's
that
pretty interesting, actually.
Something that you touching upon that just reminded me was in my intro, I talked about everything except for the storyline. Does someone want to kind of tell our listeners here a summary of what Why the Last Man is about?
Yeah, sure. In essence, there's been an apocalypse. And the apocalypse isn't actually a nuclear bomb or something along those lines. It's a virus or something which simultaneously kills all the men on the planet at the same time, and even like all the animals with a Y chromosome. So there are no men left. Every man has died. Which basically has a whole lot of ramifications in terms of clearly the population can't continue to expand. Clearly we've got now like half the population of the world is now dead, and then we need to get rid of these bodies, etc., etc. Like, however, there has been one man that has survived, and his monkey.
One of the best non-human characters in a comic book.
And the main character's name is Yorick, and hence he's known as Y. And essentially he is now trying to not acquaint himself. Just at the start of the story, he's become engaged to his, or I think become engaged to a fiance in Australia.
To his fiance,
he didn't actually hear the response, I think is the way it's phrased, and so he's now trying to reunite himself with her. But he is also the last man, which is clearly a desirable commodity to a certain extent. It's certainly a sticking point for many different characters in the story. But yeah, that's essentially the first novel at least is the story of his travels and his attempts to try and solve this problem of why is he the last man? And see what I did with that? That was very clever, wasn't it? and to explore the actual world and to sort of it feels that there's a lot of character development in there as well. So in introducing into the other players in this story. So yeah,
we might go into that a little bit soon. Bauxite, did you get a chance to read this and to kind of go into Why the Last Man?
No, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to look at it at all.
Okay.
Well, that's not quite true. I did, but instead I decided to spend all of my time on Jessica Jones.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That's a fair decision. And if there was anything that you were going to pass up Why the Last Man for, I'd probably say Jessica Jones would be fine.
Yep.
Here, I think kind of it's hard to do justice to why that story is so good. We've seen so many post-apocalyptic kind of stories, but I think here definitely, that gender element is fascinating. At risk of, we spoil things in this show, so certainly it's a series that they had very few male characters, is what I will say. They introduced a couple more later down the track. It turns out he's not the last man, but there's not very many left. And when you do meet one of them in particular, he's not exactly a nice guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was half expecting those guys to immediately die when they get back to Earth.
It does happen in the case of those. So two astronauts end up crashing down to Earth. They don't last very long. There are certainly transgendered characters, definitely sort of someone that later comes into the story, but here I think the sense of humor in this was quite amazing, as far as situations Yorick finds himself in, the way he describes it. The voice of the characters is fantastic. What were some of the other things that you guys liked about this?
What Bluetongue was saying about being the last man is a valuable commodity. What I really loved is how they just shot that male fantasy down chapter 2.
Yeah.
You're like, so this is 60 chapters of him sleazing his way across the southern hemisphere. Fantastic. No. You encounters a woman. You're looking at her, oh, she's drawn nicely. Oh, she's a bit alright, and you just learn her backstory. Oh, you were a supermodel. Oh, you got a boob job. Oh, I see where this is going. No.
And I guess that, they avoided the obvious with this. They didn't avoid the obvious, but they certainly didn't take it down that route of him being, the last man to impregnate every woman.
When I say he's a valuable commodity, he's valued by virtue of the fact that he is the only remaining one, and that may lead to some sort of solution as to why this happened, as opposed to he must now repopulate the world.
Yeah. But like I said, chapter 2. So if you're looking for a sleaze fest, dear listeners, I don't think Why the Last Man is for you.
Although, that said, he's not sleazing his way around, but that's not to say he's not tempted either. Was that sorry?
He's not a monk either.
No. And, the way he describes, I won't spoil it on here. One of the few things we won't spoil is how he deals with the situation, shall we say. But I like the way that was written. The way the dialogue for that part was hilarious, as Brian K. Boyd's stuff is.
He's definitely one of the most witty comic book characters I've come across.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of his appeal. And what makes his story interesting, because there's bad stuff happening all around him, and regardless of the situation, he's always got some smart retort or some smart comment to make.
Something I've just got in the notes that I don't actually like in the comic is what a lot of comics will do is they'll open up in page 1 or page 2 and there's someone dead in front of you and you're like, oh, what's happened? And then the next page is 20 minutes earlier or 2 hours.
Yeah.
Comics do it way too much. It's a cheap, nasty trick, and Why the Last Man does it a lot too.
That's true.
I think maybe I'm a sadist, but I personally love that. I personally enjoyed that aspect to this, the way the time was spent. And I think here what stands out when we're talking about this show, or it's going to be a show soon, actually, but this series is and I think I'm not sure. Actually, this might be a good jumping off point just for a second here. But Blue, how far through the series are you here? Like, did you manage the first volume or?
I've completed the first volume. That is all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can't really follow up beyond that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to lend you the rest of them or something because
Sure.
I didn't sort of go through them all in 2 days like Harrow did. However, I do remember going to Paris and spending 1 day of my time in Paris reading the last chapter of this start to finish, sitting there traumatized in this cafe within walking distance of the Eiffel Tower. And my wife, well, she's my fiance at this point, and our friend that was there with us, I couldn't quite explain to them why I was now all of a sudden feeling quite down. I think the ending is quite a punch in the gut, I would say.
Does the ending make you worry about how Saga's going to end?
I mentioned that when we're talking about Saga. It really does.
It's been edited out.
I mean, I don't want to go into that too much, but certainly the potential is absolutely there for Saga to end in much the same kind of way. But without going into too much detail here, as much as we do spoil things on this show, I think worth just pointing out is that, characters in this don't always have nice endings, and that's what makes this so unusual. It's a story with a beginning, middle, and end.
And not riding into the sunset type of ending.
At all. So the thing here is something that Vaughn did with the last chapter of another one of his works that I highly recommend, Ex Machina. The last kind of part of that final collection is used to tell a story of several years condensed to one issue. Particular technique he likes to use, very much a sped up way of handling your last bits that you haven't dealt with yet, but the impact of that was just horrid. Very bittersweet ending.
I do. Something I did love was chapter 17 I believe it was chapter 17 where the playwrights were creating a play about the last man on Earth, and I'm like, oh, this is chapter 17. There's 60. This had better not be foreshadowing the ending. And thankfully it doesn't, but geez, it was still a very good chapter.
Oh, so that was a long time ago that I read that.
Yeah. The play ends. The play. Okay, there you go. I'm going to spoil this for you. The ending of the play in chapter 17 is because he's the last man and is a commodity, as Bluetongue was describing. The nations of the world were at war to try and get him and study him. So in the end, he destroyed himself so there would be peace on Earth. He sacrificed himself so the women would survive. And I'm like, and when you see that in the end of the play, like, if this series ends like that, I'm going to shit a brick.
Even without that being the ending, though, like short of Yorick dying, Yorick doesn't die in the end. I'll put it that way.
Okay. It's like, I'm sort of going, does everyone else die?
Look, I'm not even going to say that, it's not that a matter of who dies, it's a matter of a whole lot of other events that happen.
It's a matter of who doesn't die.
It's not the deaths that's, for me, the main impact, and I'll keep that, I'm sorry for not being more ambiguous on this, but,
No, could you please be more ambiguous?
Yeah. I have too much understanding from what you've just said. How did you guys feel about his sister's character?
Well, I found her to be a largely sideline character up until toward the end when she played a very big part.
Okay.
Am I accurate on that one there?
I've only got opinions based on the first one though, so I'm sort of, yep. She's fairly prominent within the first actual.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if a big part of her story, of her character arc, is redemption, but they don't really go into it very much.
Okay, I
That it would have, you could have done a lot. The character would have been better if they actually touched on her less or a lot more. The level we got, I didn't really like.
Okay. I just within the first volume, I was feeling very negative towards her. The actual character didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And yeah, like regardless of whatever emotional turmoil or struggles you're going through, having witnessed the terrible things that you did, you would still have some measure of affection for your brother, you would hope. So, yeah, I didn't really understand that part of that character.
Certainly some mental issues there, though. Certainly, like they go into that more and more. But yeah, I guess the redemption story is probably the best way of putting it.
But were you happy with it? Do you think it would have benefited from more or less?
I would even go as far as less. Like, I didn't find the character to be that engaging. Maybe some more exploration of her motivations might have, like, made me take a shine to her a bit more, but, yeah.
Okay.
What about the character of Yorick's mother? So, Yorick's mother, for those of you not familiar with the story, basically the president has died, and, you know, so have every other man at this point, as have the vice president, the speaker of the house, so everyone in the succession, most of them, the succession order for president goes from the vice president to the speaker of the house, and then your secretaries. Yorick's mum is the agricultural secretary, so fairly down the line, she becomes...
Yorick's mum's not the agriculture secretary. That's a totally different character. Yorick's mum's just a congresswoman.
Oh, so just a congresswoman.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Excuse me for getting the detail wrong here. It's been like a year since I've read it. But basically, here Yorick's mum becomes the. Yeah. She's got it going on. If by it you mean the presidency of the United States by default, so she slides into that role. And by the way, obscure reference for the win. That's been like 12 years since that song came out. But here, basically, becomes president, completely unexpected. What do you guys think of her character?
Harrow, I need to correct you there. You are completely wrong. She is the Secretary for Agriculture.
Huzzah! I got that correct.
His mum is... So, was I imagining them as two different characters?
There are some other characters she meets up within the White House, but yeah, she is the Secretary for Agriculture.
There you go. All right, apologies, people. I'm wrong. I did like that they had how they described the power vacuum. It goes, yeah, we can only put another congresswoman in when it's validated by a governor, and most of them were male, so we don't actually have any governors to bring in congressmen. Congresswoman, as it were. So yeah, I love how the Americans, and then later on in the story, only the Pope can validate bishops. Only the archbishops can validate bishops, other clergymen. And then when all those were male, the Catholic Church just went, crap. So they had their elaborate scheme to try and make more clergy.
Yeah, certainly. I think that the description there is that while all these other roles have completely died out, the entire agricultural workforce is still pretty much intact.
Is it?
And that was a point that they made, that basically, you know, while as much as you lose all these other things, women were still working in agriculture. It was kind of using that to highlight issues like wage disparities and whatnot. But here, one of my favorite stories from this isn't actually within the story itself, but to do with his mother. One of the early ideas that they had as far as this series went was basically that the reason Yorick would survive was because he was in the White House when that happened. He was in like a White House safety room kind of thing, and ended up obviously shifting that. But Brian K. Vaughan was researching this, hadn't been outside for a few days, had just been intently researching it as he does all of his work, and you know, massively bushy beard, the likes of which kind of we've never really seen before on him, pale because he's not been in sunlight, and he needed to know how that would work as far as the layout of the White House and infectious diseases. So you can probably see where this is going. heads to his local library, massive bushy beard, pale as, and walks up to the desk and says, "Excuse me, I was wondering if I could get a schematic of the White House and a book on how to make infectious diseases." So, yeah, probably ended up on a sort of a watch list or two in the making of this series. And if that was the case, I would say well worth it. Definitely job well done for this series. Would you guys recommend this series to others? And if so, whom?
Everyone in the world.
Yeah, yep.
It's that good.
Okay. I'm not sure I agree with you there. I certainly enjoyed it, and I devoured this first volume in about a night, I think I did. But I'm not sure it's going to be everyone's cup of tea, where to the extent of, I don't know, excitement levels in it didn't really get really, really high for me. A lot of it was sort of standoff type situations and stuff like that. There's not big action sequences and stuff like that people might be looking for out of something comparatively, let's say, I don't know, from Watchmen or Saga or something like that, with a big showdown between two characters or something like that. A lot of it's sort of exploring negotiation and character development, it felt like to me. So for people who enjoy that sort of political drama and that sort of thing, so we're talking like House of Cards type thing, I think that might appeal. This might appeal more to those people. What do you guys think?
If you like a good survival story or a survival drama, I'd recommend this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like
if you like The Walking Dead, I would say this maybe similar kind of level in terms of being for an older audience.
Yeah.
If you like Russians with sniper rifles, they've got you.
Yeah, there's a Venn diagram right now they could construct with. That is one of the categories, but I think people Yep.
Sorry, I was going to say, like, what age group do you guys think would really suit this kind of story?
Teenagers could handle this, but I'd definitely say the thing here, what I found with comic books in general, I would not have been into this comic at high school. I'm not saying I wouldn't be able to deal with the content. I mean, I wouldn't have enjoyed it. I think it's more of a kind of 18 plus, just sheerly, not in terms of content, just sheerly in terms of your enjoyment level.
Yeah, exactly.
Take it in and appreciate it.
Yeah, the people who are going to get the most out of it are generally going to be like older comic book readers kind of thing.
Yeah, I would probably recommend this for people between 47 and a half and 53.
Yeah, I think you've got the right demo right there as far as the age bracket.
Yeah, like early retiree comic book reader.
But not so early that you have actually kind of had a chance to use that much of your super kind of thing. You know, maybe people with extra time on their hands.
Yeah. I feel like there's a number, like the audience is getting older. Like from the comic books I read when I was young and the comic strips out of newspapers and stuff like that. Like myself and many other people who were interested in that stuff when they were younger are all starting to age, and some of the content which was directed at that audience that was younger once upon a time is now directed at us being older.
What do they say the median age of comic readers nowadays isn't teens, it's like late 20s, early 30s?
So they did some data for Marvel's comics. 34 was the median age, and 40% of the readership was female. So, and I think that's worth keeping in mind as far as a comic like this, which deals with gender issues, which is aimed at a more mature kind of level. And definitely, I dare say the other people that I would suggest and that would be interested in this, who I recommend this for, it kind of goes without saying, but anyone that enjoyed Saga would definitely enjoy this.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I really wish something like this had existed when I was doing like English in high school and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where I could bring a comic book to the table and then still have really interesting themes and like adult things to talk about within that comic book.
So the only problem I would then say with that is that I don't know anyone at our school that would have, like, from the teaching staff that would have been okay with that. I just would have gone, it's a comic, it's automatically garbage because that form of media is just crap.
Yeah, and then I just failed English for their already like preconceived ideas. I love that.
The thing here, like this has been a major rant of mine for so long because I was told in year 8 to put away the comic book that I had for LEP. That was when we were meant to read. It was mandatory reading time because it wasn't like a book. We were meant to have a book. And now, years later, the actual focus now is on, wait for it, multimodal literacies. So being able to have something that's both visual and involves reading, like, I don't know, a f***ing comic book. So, yeah, look, those assholes that said that wasn't adequate reading have now had their kinds of preconceived notions turned sideways and stuck right up there. So,
you're completely wrong. No, they haven't had those notions, no. They are not changed at all because they are not engaged.
In terms of where the actual literature behind this is going, but they're all now in that kind of horrible baby boomer stage of I'm just towards retirement. I don't give a shit about teaching, so I'm not going to bother learning anything new. So you're right to say that, but absolutely, you could do a whole course around Y the Last Man and what kind of ways you could plumb the depths of what it has to say about gender and other literature, including Shakespeare. It would be fantastic to accompany Shakespeare, but something I think a thing or two about.
Shakespeare, the, very, very high class, literature that includes things like fart and poop jokes.
Tarantino would be Shakespeare in his day.
I don't know, man. I think like Cheech and Chong would be Shakespeare.
Yeah. And everyone complains about Shakespeare. Oh, sorry, everyone sort of idolizes Shakespeare, and then like just conveniently forgoes the themes like incest and stuff like that which pop up from time to time.
I've heard that one scene in Macbeth where during his soliloquy he says, there's the rub. Just that's something I've heard, hasn't been confirmed for me, but is that he's getting a when that takes place. So, yeah, definitely not what you learnt about in high school English.
Mm. All right. So, lots of editing for me there. Good times.
Honestly, I think you just ship this out the way it is.
Close to.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we can wind up.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for joining us this week. We hope you've enjoyed yourselves as much as Macbeth did. You can catch us on Twitter at wellplayedau. You can send us questions, comments, or abuse at wellplayed@gmail.com. And if you like us, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or follow us on SoundCloud or subscribe on YouTube. All of the things.
Yes. Please leave us comments and things to talk about. I'd love to have some good audience interaction in this show.
All right. See you guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.